So I believe imeanza kurecord. Yes. So as we get started, kama uko na swali unaweza irusha tu, there's no harm. So yes, in index.html I'm going to do like start the HTML thing. No, HTML nimalizie story. Good. So I'm going to do my title here, Javascript, and here I'm going to just include the script from this other file ./index.js. I'm going to use index.js to go through, and I'm going to say here a heading one of JavaScript. Yes. So if I start the server, a moment, VS Code yangu inakaa sluggish. Yes. So you can notice nothing else hits here, but I'm going to open the console. That's the web developer tools, Chrome developer tools. Right click and say inspect. Then here we shall have the console here. So this is my console. Currently it's something like sort of, it has some problems, so let's create. There we go. So we shall use the console in relation with the browser, this part here, do the JavaScript, so that tuweke hizo vitu pamoja, what goes where, and at least to have a flow of what's happening with JavaScript. Yes. So here we are going to start low while we are going up. So I'm going to do some comments of what we are going to cover today. And today we are going to cover a few things. The first one is how to use, that will be the second one. The first one will be uh, data types. The second one will be how to use console.log, ama console, just console, because it has a lot of other things. We have console.log, console.warn, console.error. These are the common ones. And also we have the console.info. We'll explain all those. And after that, we are going to talk about doing functions. After talking about functions, we are going also to talk about classes. It might be just touch basing. What are these? So after classes, we shall do. Actually, I think classes is kind of far. Let me do after how to use the console.log, and after doing JavaScript functions, I'm going to introduce another one here, that is the DOM API. So the DOM API is how to interact with HTML. That's about the DOM API, in fact. Then we shall do classes and etc. So by this part here, etc., I mean this will be the first part we should cover today, I believe, so that we can cover the rest as we go on. But for now, this will give us a heads up of what's JavaScript. So JavaScript, from what customers had given us yesterday, is another, is it a scripting language? Yes, because it's JavaScript scripting language. So what do we mean scripting language? A scripting language is a language that allows you to do like some logical flow of your program. So HTML is not scripting because it's like just a markup, just something looks like static. But now with the scripting is that you give like a flow of what you're doing. It might not be the correct explanation of scripting, but that's what I have for now. Yes, the video. Okay, let me just confirm if it's recording. Yes, it's recording here. So, so what are the data types? That was the first step we were to start with. What are the data types? When we talk about data types, as the term goes, data, we have something like, for example, my name. That is, let's say Dalmas is my name. How can you classify this? Like, what's the type of Dalmas? So Dalmas is data, you see. Then what type of Dalmas? So yesterday we were like jumping up and down. So Dalmas, for example, that's my name. It's a string. So strings, for example, here we said when we are doing Java HTML inputs, we could say the type of an input to be a text. You see, so data, for example, text is a data type, but in JavaScript it's not called text. This is called a string. So let's say my age is 24. So how can you classify 24? 24 can be classified as a number. Though a number is kind of large, it has some other data types in it. So string and a number. And also in JavaScript, we have a data type. That is it none? It's none a data type, no. So these are the common. And the next one, let's say Dalmas. If you ever ask somebody, do you like something? They will answer yes or no. That is, do you like coding? For example, I can say, does Dalmas like coding? So this could be a question. You could answer yes or no. That is, it's either true that Dalmas likes coding or false that Dalmas does not like coding. So this data type is called a Boolean. Are there only three? I believe so. We have a string, a number, and a boolean. So I said a number is kind of large. 24 is just a number. But what do we call a number that is 24.5? This is different. It's still a number, but it's called a float. So that's another data type. But under number, we have another. Let's say we have a long number. So this could be a double. That's a data type. That's but under number. Then we have a large number, but quite small than, it's not a really large number, which is called an integer. So when we talk of numbers, just remember there are kind of three, yes. A float is a number with these decimal points. A double is a very, am I right here, Robin? A double is a very long number. What? Okay, yeah, so yeah, a double and what's a double? And an integer, yes, yeah, a double is a long number and an integer is a short number. But in JavaScript, these data types that we have here, if I may just write them here, we have a string, we have a number that has integers, doubles, and floats, and we also have Boolean. Also, there's another one, I believe it's undefined. Not sure whether this is a data type, but it falls under the, okay. I believe hizi ndizo pekee naweza kumbuka kwa sasa. So we have only this. But in JavaScript, when you are defining data types, you don't have to define like I'm doing, for example, here I say let. Oh, I missed something here, guys. I'll just add it before we continue. So we have data types and also we have number two, let's call this one how. to declare variables. So that is variable declaration. How do you declare your data? So I say let my name equals to Dalmas. So when you are defining these data types, for example, a string, always remember a string has these quotes upper. So that's a string. It has those quotes. It can be double quotes or a single quotes like that. That's for a string. When we declare another data type, let's say age, I say 24. So when you are doing a number, it does not have the quotes. So that's for age, that's for a number. All numbers, they don't have any quote. Then the other one, we say let, I'll explain what this let means. So let's say likes coding. So this is data type of the boolean. I say here false, or it can also be true if I wanted. And actually, you do small true and small false, lowercase false and lowercase true. That is, does this person like coding? Yes or no? That is yes for true and no for false. If we were to say, oh, I think I've missed this one. Yes, that one undefined. So for undefined, let's say you want to use something that is not defined. Let's say, yeah, we say, uh, how can I do this? I'm not trying to call undefined. Oh, yes, I can do to do equals to my new to do. So naturally, JavaScript will treat this as a variable. But let's talk about variables. I believe we have talked about these small data types here. I know this list is not exhaustive, but with JavaScript, uh, it's not really that considerate, but very critical still to understand the kind of data you are dealing with. If you are dealing with people's names, those are the strings. If you are dealing with people's phone numbers, those are the numbers. So if you are dealing with people's emails, those are strings. So let's talk about the declaring variables. So for example, let here is used to declare a variable. This let here, uh, let me just write something here for illustration purposes. I'm going to do another comment. I say here the title will be variable declaration. So so when you are doing variable declarations, like you want to store some data into memory. For example, this my name here Dalmas has been stored into memory by this variable name here. So when you are declaring a variable, you start by the variable type here. I've called that variable type because yes, literally, and here we say a variable name. So that's how you declare. Okay, do that, I do that, I do that, I do that. So you say a variable type, a variable name, then you could either do equals to, or that's called initializing, and then you say the variable value, that's the value that you are going to pass here. Sometimes it's not a must for you to do equals to, so let me declare some variables. So what are the variable types that we have? We have a few variable types. I can say we have let, we have var, and also we have const. So these are the available variable types. A variable name can be any name that you think you want to call your variable. So let's declare the first variable. It's already declared. So let my name equals to Dalmas. So let here is taking this value of variable type. My name is the variable name, and equals to Dalmas is what we have as the value. That's how you declare a variable. But sometimes, as I said, it's not a must for you to have this equals to. Sometimes you can decide, okay, I want to reuse this variable. I'm going to declare it. Let gender. You just leave it that way. You could add a semicolon or just leave it blank. And also, let's say you wanted to declare a list of variables without doing let phone number here, and you also go down let email. So this kind of looks good, but if you are not adding any value to these variables, sometimes it's good if you just initialize them in a single line. So let gender, comma, phone number, comma, and was it email? Yes. So you could do something like this. You have just declared them, and you have not assigned any value to them, like my name has been assigned a value. So sometimes that's what you do. So we have talked about the first one, let. So let allows you to mutate. That's the next term. What's the meaning of mutate? Uh, so mutate in this case means like able to change. That's the term mutation. I believe all, we have at least some background from maybe a form 1 or form 2 biology mutation. So let and var allows the value, or they can mutate. So if I did here say let my name equals to Dalmas, I can also go down here and say uh, my name is no longer Dalmas but Ogembo. You see, let allows you to mutate, but because we are not logging anything out, we won't see any result, visible result. So that's the next step. So let and var, they can change. The easier term, they can change. But we have another variable type called const, which cannot change. So I can say here const. That's how you declare a variable type of const. As const goes, it means it's a constant. It's no longer called a variable. Now this is a constant. So because yeah, variable is the larger term used, but we have const. So I can say const. Um, I'm looking for a term to use. Okay, let's say const var const variable name equals to fixed. So this means if I wanted to edit variable name, if I did this way to changing, it will definitely be nice. So how can we be sure if these things are working or not working? So let's talk about the other part that is called how to use console.log. Yeah, how to use console.log. Let's use that one. How to use the console to see the result. So I'm just going to delete most of this up to here. Did I delete to do? No, I don't want to delete that one. So these are just declarations so far. So I'm going to go to the browser and see what we have in the console. If I come here, go to the console, you will notice nothing is happening because we have not like printed anything. So to print something in JavaScript, we use a term called console.log. I'm sure you saw this one yesterday. So what console.log does is it allows you to see what you have declared, or it allows you to print something so that you can follow up on it. So I can copy this, my name here, and I'm going to console.log my name. So if I console.log like that, you will notice Dalmas here. If you see the first line on top here, let me zoom in a bit. Yes, there, Dalmas goes there. So if I check the type of Dalmas, type of my name, that type of this variable, you will notice it's saying a string. So that's the fastest way of determining the type of data you are dealing with. That's for the common data, because there are other kinds of data you might not like be able to do like this and just do like that. For example, if I do console.log this, let me just, this is an illustration. We'll explain it a bit because we were on. It's not really like working out. just going to drop it and do here and let some data equals to that. I say type of some data. You will notice it's saying object. This is another data type which I didn't cover up on top here, so we'll just definitely add it here. Object, and I'm going to add another one called an array. So array and objects, they will kind of are the same, because if you check the kind of object, it will still say object and say let array. No, this is an array. This is called an array, by the way. Array is defined by these square brackets. Let me do let object equals to that. If I say the type of object, still it will be an object. So yes, that's console.log. So I'm going to console log. We did see how my name works, like that. It's here, Dalmas. If I console.log age, that is age, like that, you will notice it's saying 24. And if you look at 24 here, it's kind of bluish. And if I check the type of age, it's saying it's a number. So age is a number because it haina hizo quotes. Now, if I go down a bit to likes coding, I console.log likes coding, like that. It's saying to say false. If you are able to see the false there, but if I change this one to true, it's going to say true. So that's a boolean, a data type. It's something either you like it true or you don't like it false. Then if I go down to variable name, this variable name, I paste it there. It's saying fixed. If I check the type of fixed, type of variable name, it's saying it's a string, but it has the term or the variable type as const behind here. So why is it different from the rest? So let's console.log to do. I'll explain why const is different from let. I'm going to consolidate the to do. So to do, it's saying my new to do. Literally with JavaScript, without declaring or having the variable name here, it's still going to work out well. When can it not work? If we were to ask, why can't this work? So if I go back on top here, I'm going to also introduce something called strict JavaScript and an unstrict JavaScript. So this is not strict JavaScript, because usually when you declare a variable, you need to either define its variable type. Is it a variable type? Yes, you need to either declare it using let or const, or the other term I have not touched on is var. Let me just introduce var too. So var some data here. I say it's just something. Let me just call this a string, some string here. So var also works the normal way as let works, though var and let have minor differences, or have major, let me say they have like a major difference or a major use case. So var and let can be used interchangeably because they allow mutation of the data they are holding. For example, if I declare something like var some data, some string, I can be able to update this some string to something else. I can say something else here. So if I print some data, you will notice something else has been printed. That is using console.log. So they are quite different. They are used interchangeably, but in general, just don't use var. Don't use var when you are declaring your variables. Only use let. Reason being, when you use var, you might find yourself into some major or some minor problems that you don't like. So just avoid using var generally and stick to let. let and var work interchangeably, but they have some differences. For example, I'll explain that one when we reach the conditions, something called conditions. So it can be under this. After there, we can do number 6 here and say conditions. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, yeah, you are exactly right. So conditional statements and loops. So that's the topic. So when we reach at this point, maybe I'll explain deeper why you are supposed to use let and not var. But for now, let's just stick that you are not supposed to use var unless you just want to write the legacy JavaScript code. Legacy means very old code. So just use let. Let is kind of new, introduced this juni. Hi, I don't nimesahau hiyo mwaka ilikuwa introduced, but it's new to var. Var was the old way of writing or declaring variables. Let is the new way, and it's the most advanced way. So so that's some data. I was able to change some data because it's using let or var. If I do that, still something else appears because I can mutate it down here. So let's talk about, I'll comment out to do, and let's talk about const a bit. So const variable name. Okay, so let me call this a fixed variable. Yeah, this is a fixed variable. I've just renamed the const fixed variable. If I console log the fixed variable down here, you will notice it's saying fixed. So let's do something. I'm going to update the fixed variable just below here, and I'm going to say fixed variable equals to something else. Save. If I come to the browser, you might notice something weird or an error. It's not a weird thing, it's an error. So it's saying unicode type error, assignment to constant variable. What does that mean? If you try to update a constant variable, an error is thrown to you saying you are trying to assign something constant. Let's say what we all know, for example, is called pi. This is const pi. We all know that pi is that value 22 slash 7 or whatever you might do. Ilikuwa 142. I don't know with those values. So pi is constant. You might notice a difference how I have written pi here. Const pi, I've written it in uppercase. P and I are in uppercase. That's the best way of declaring constant variables. So for example, this one is not really good. I've said const fixed variable and I've said fixed. So I needed to do fixed variable here like this. So that's how I do it. I change this one here, change this one here, so that I won't get an error. So when you are declaring constants, just declare them using uppercase because they are not going to change anywhere. That's the only way you are going to differentiate them being, is it a constant or something which is variable like let. So when you are declaring constants, always write them in uppercase, all letters in uppercase, then you give them their constant value. Those constant variables are not going to change, but this let allows you to mutate or change the variable value. So that's about constants. You are not allowed to reassign constants again. So we get an error, an assignment to constant variable. The next one we were to talk about is, so this is an error, and our code, by the way, when a code executes and gets an error, even if you try to do something here, console.log something, you will notice it's not like logging out something. It's because the way JavaScript is executed, it's executed top down, kutoka juu kwenda chini. So this line is executed first. For example, this comment was executed first. It was noted to be a comment and it was skipped. This is a comment, noted to be a comment, it was skipped. Comment, skipped. So hapa ikasoma vizuri. The moment ilifika hapa, ikafail. It got an error. the program stopped running. That's how most languages work. The moment they hit an error, that's where they break. But if I did some console.log here, console dot instead let's do .info. It works the same as console.log, but console.log is more of general. Console.info kind of arranges your work or your logs in a specific way. If this this statement you want to print out, you don't want it to be just a general statement, it's an informational statement, we do console.info. I say here some information. So if I save that, you might not notice the difference here or console.info doing something else, but if I click here, you might notice these types here. If I click on info, it will only bring this. If I click on error, it will bring the error. If I click on warning, it will bring on warnings. So let me go back and change and do something here. Console dot warn. I say a warning. I save. You might notice now the warning portion has the warning, or now this one has totally been styled fully to warning. So it is in yellow. So that's how you use the console types, console logging types. That is info one, and we also have the console dot error that allows you to an error message. So they have different use cases. If I click on error, you might notice an error message here. This has been forced to an error message. This is a forced error message because we just logged it out on ourselves. This one has been caught by the compiler. So what's a compiler? A compiler is whatsoever that reads the code here, understands it, and executes for the user. Yes, that's the work of a compiler. Like, it reads the code, understands it, gives out what a user can understand. So JavaScript is like uses a real-time compiler, I can say. That is a real-time compiler provided by, it can be provided by an environment called Node, or 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 an environment like a web browser. So that's the compiler. So the web browser here, Chrome, is the compiler of JavaScript. So some languages have different compilers. Others compile at runtime, others compile at build time, others compile at, yeah, I believe runtime and build time. Ours is running at, is it a runtime? Yes, I believe. So it's compiled sahi venye tunaitaka. But C++ and other C++, Java, you don't do it like this. For C++, you have to compile the code. Then after compiling the code itself, it run kando. But with JavaScript, you just do it as it goes on. Like, I can say it's sort of real time. It's running. Is it on the runtime? I'm forgetting these terms. So yeah. So that's about this. Where was I? About the console. So you could use this in different manners. So it's not all the time you want to like do console.log, everything you see console.log. Sometimes you want, if it's an error, so let me just go down here. Where is that variable? I'm going to comment out this variable because it's wrong. So I'm just going to delete it. You are not supposed to reassign a constant. So sometimes where do you use this about info, one, and error? So let's say you wanted to, let me comment out also this. This is a bit about conditions. So if, where's my like? If Dalmas likes coding, so that is if likes coding, this is wrong. I'm going to add the equals to true. If likes coding, that is if Dalmas likes coding. Let's actually do Dalmas likes coding like that. If Dalmas likes coding, just say console dot log Dalmas likes coding. Else, if Dalmas does not like coding, just console dot warn, say Dalmas does not like coding. So this one use case, this is conditional statements. If, else, there are others. So if, actually it's whatever we do here. If I like coding, I believe we do use that term very much. So here we go. Where is it? We had an error message here. Yes. Okay. So it's saying Dalmas likes coding. But if we were to change this Dalmas likes coding to false, you will notice something else here. Dalmas does not like coding. So we use these different kinds of console.info, one, and error. There are actually several. So we can do console dot. We have count. We have uh, we have this. Okay, the rest I believe they are not for coloring. We have console.time, time end. Yeah, those. So if you look at the console function, console is a built-in function to JavaScript runtime. So if you look at it, it has different functions. So the most common are those ones that I have showed. That's console.info, .one, and .error. Use them whenever you need to do a different thing. You don't want to just log, you just want to show this is an error that occurred here, so that for yourself when you are recording, you'll be able to differentiate the different types of console. And also useful when you are using this icon here, show console sidebar. If you click there, you can be able to look at the warnings directly, look at the errors directly, you look at all the console messages, and look at the info messages or console.info messages separately. That's a good use case, so that you don't want to just pump everything into console.log and you can't differentiate, oh, this was supposed to be an error, this was supposed to be a warning, this was supposed to be just information. Yeah, that's about console. Using the console. So this is a condition. So we have just checked if Dalmas likes coding, then just say console.log Dalmas likes coding. Else Dalmas does not like coding. That's the exact opposite. If this one has to result to true, this condition here has to result to true in order for this logic to work. Otherwise, if this condition has not resulted to true, then the else part is going to run. I said as we started, this is the wrong way of doing things. If it's just a if it's just a message like this, usually already we know this is a boolean. You don't have to just check. So this is how are they this called? Comparison operators. So this is a comparison operator. How to check equals to in JavaScript. I'm using 3 equal signs. Sometimes you might find somebody using 2 equal signs. These are the so-called comparison operators. Also, let me include them here so that we don't forget about them. Just above that number, I'm going to say, are they comparison operators? I'm just going to say here comparison because I'm not sure. But let's just add operators here. Or comparison operations. That sounds better. So equals is one of them. There are others which we can use to check whether things are what we want. So I'll just delete this and we flow down according to what we had. So the next thing I said is we were to talk about this to do here. To do. So if I save this file right now, you will notice we have nothing here. Like if I were to reload the page, literally we will only see the 5 server here. But sometimes this to do has not been declared. How can we tell it has not been declared? We have not declared it using let, or we have not declared it using const. How can we be able to say this to do existed before we assign a value to it? So that's, let me roll back to what I was to introduce. The talk about uh, strict JavaScript and non-strict JavaScript. Strict and non Non-strict does not exist. I've just said yes. Let me just introduce them. So what is strict JavaScript? Strict JavaScript, let me start by non-strict before this other. What's happening here? Yeah. So yeah, let's start with non-strict. So this kind of JavaScript is not strict because we were able to assign a value to do where we have not declared its type. Is it a variable let or is it a constant using const? So sometimes it can work out when with non-strict JavaScript, everything is just running normal. So if I were to come here above the to do and say here console.one, uh, some warning, and I go below, I say console.one like this. I say some error. Okay, let me just say some message like that. If I do that, you will notice some warning and some message appearing in the branch in the console.log. But it's not all the time. We have not declared to do, or so that's where strict JavaScript comes in. And how do you like change your file to use strict JavaScript for you to catch errors while you are developing and not to ship errors to production? So when you how to do it is we do it manually, and it's the first thing that you want to do on your JavaScript file. Huko juu mwanzo kabisa, you just say here use strict that. If I save this, why is it not working? Fun enough. So I have said here use strict, but it's not like kind of working the way it should. Let me just refresh the page. Yeah, it's not working. So it should have caught this error here. To do has not been declared, or it has been declared and I have no idea. No, it has not been declared. So I believe I've missed something here, and it's best that if I address it right now. So how to use strict mode in JavaScript. Just a quick search can help us quickly debug it out. And usually pick a link from W3 schools. You see it is saying use strict with a space. So for my case, I only added a dash here. It's not the case. So I delete that one, save. So if I come to my browser here, you will note something else. Uncaught reference error. To do is not defined. Why is that an error? So when you are defining variables in JavaScript, usually you need either to start it with a let or a const or a var. That's what I said. So, but if you try to do something like this to do here, and you say, okay, you just create a variable out of the air and say to do equals to my new to do. If you are in strict JavaScript mode, you will notice it will raise an error. We don't have our second warning. So let me just add this. I've declared this. So to declare it, I only need to add let here or add const here. But for this case, it's let. So if I do that, the error is gone and we have some message here. Yes, a question? So ulipata kufikia wapi? Oh, pole. So I believe ukifuata nini ama tukiendelea na ukifuata video you'll be able to get something. So that's how sawa. So that's how we do declare variables. Let to do equals to this. But if we are in JavaScript strict mode and you have not declared the function or declared the not the function, you have not declared the variable, then definitely you are going to get yourself into this error. But if you are not in strict mode, and as I said, use strict is the first thing you want to add to your JavaScript file. And I prefer you could do this for all your development purposes ndio usipatane na errors mingi. it will help you catch errors before you make them. So if I do that, come here, you'll notice without use strict this one, the JavaScript code will work out well. And if I were to go down and print out the to do here, where even here console.log to do, this is how I log the to do like that. Then you will notice my new to do will just work out. But when you are in strict JavaScript mode, that's not going to work. It's going to result to an error. So I can say add this to your files just on line 1 when you start writing your JavaScript code. So that's about how to declare variables. Let me do here. Let me just include the let here. And I'm going to just comment out the console.log so far up to there and this one here. So far we are good, and we have included use strict on top here. So as I have said, use strict, it will help you catch errors before you decide to make them and publish them somewhere. So yeah, that's about console.log, variables, how to declare variables, data types, and how to use console.log. Any questions so far? Okay, right. So if there's no other question, let's go to the next part. So this part we have done here, it's not really exhaustive, I can say for free. So this is just an introduction. Most of the stuff you will learn when you are doing real projects or when you are working on a project. So it's better that we follow through down that way. So that's about the data types, how to declare variables, and how to use the console, JavaScript console. And in fact, in this console, it's funny that you can write JavaScript here because it does not need compiling for it to run. It runs in the runtime itself. And for your information, Chrome has like a runtime of JavaScript and HTML and CSS. So Chrome reads the code, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, alafu it just writes to this window here saying, oh, this is something here, you could do something with it. So if you have something here like that, so it's just going to say yes, it's not defined because you have not defined anything. You could clear your console using this like arrow there, circle there with a slash in the midst. Just do that and it will clear your console. It's good with this Chrome tab or with this Chrome developer tools, and most browsers like Firefox has the same. Just right click and inspect, you'll get the same developer console. Here I can be able to write my JavaScript. Let num1 equals to 1. I say let num2 equals to 2. Enter. So you notice I have num1 and num2. I can say num1 plus num2. So you'll be able to see a 3 here. So I can be able to just write JavaScript here without even needing to do JavaScript here. But there's a good reason as to why we don't write JavaScript here. That is, some things you can't write them here. For example, when you are declaring a large code, you won't be able to write it here because the large code won't, like, you will miss a lot of things when writing it, and it might not work out well. So here it's just doing some small things, not something which is large. So before I drop out of declaring variables, variable declaration, there's something critical I want to talk about. That is called how to write your variables. How to write your variables. I said when you are doing constants, uh, always write them in uppercase. It's good always write them in uppercase. So what are other rules of writing these variable names? For example, if you might notice here, I did gender, I did phone underscore number, email, and fixed underscore variable for my constant. How are you supposed to write variables? So how to write variables? So how are you supposed to write variables? There are few known methods. The first one is just camel case. Okay, let me just write them and explain them the way it goes. So the first one, I can say let name equals to my name here. So if you notice this one, I have not started it with a number. So that's the first rule. Don't start a variable with a number. You see already, even VS Code is giving me an error. Don't start a variable name with a number. It's equally the same. Don't start classes and IDs with numbers. So don't start with them with numbers. Always have numbers as the second or the last or somewhere else. Don't start variables with numbers. So that's the first rule. So let me just write it here. Don't start variable names with numbers. And I'm going to do a comment there. This is a multi-line comment. That is slash star, and it ends with star slash. That's the opening and the closing of the comment. And this is a single line comment. They have different use cases. For example, here I'm going to write the rules of writing variables. So that was the first one. It's because there are many, and it's good if I write them down that way. But if you only need to something like add some value here, for example, I'm going to say update some data to have new data here. If this is the update I'm doing here, if you do recall when we declared some data on top here, we said some data is a variable, it can change. So I can be able to update it. This is a single line comment, and I've added on top of this some data to show what is happening here. And also these comments can be used in front of the rest of the code. So you can just write it in front here and say comment. So that's the good thing with this. You could do like this, comment there, and it will still work. Writing single line comments in front of your variables, in front of your other code. For example, it can just be there, or it can be here. It can be anywhere. Just you start with a slash, then the comment goes ahead. That's about small story about comments. So we have single line, and if I want to do another comment here, just hold control slash or just type in the two slashes and say there some comment. So that was the first rule. Don't start with variable names. Don't start variable names with a number. Then second one is don't start variable names with some other special characters. So some other special characters might work out. For example, I say age here. I say 20. Let me use a number here. So if you see here, this special character is not working. It's giving an error here. And if I were to hover over the error, I'll get a message saying a semicolon is required. So why is that the case? So when I do plus age, it's trying to add let plus age. That's wrong. So some special characters are not used to declare this other. They are not used to start variable names. And you might notice something here. Age has been flagged because it's already here. Age. What does mean? What does that mean? It means that I have redeclared or redefined an existing variable name. If I save here, you will be able to see identifier. Age has already been declared. So that's what it's saying. Age has been already declared. So remember that. Don't redeclare your variables anywhere. Even constants, don't. If you did declare age here, and you come down here and try to declare it again or make it again, it will fail. The only thing I can do here, I can just do that, age equals to 20, to just update age from 24 to 20. Because as I said, JavaScript is executed top down, and that's how single-threaded applications work, or single-threaded programs work. And threads or the term thread is just like a Twitter thread. Unaona Twitter thread inafanyanga tu kutoka juu kwenda chini, ya kwanza juu, nyingine kwenda chini. That's a single thread. If there are multiple threads, that's another story of another day. So this is a single threaded program for now, as it looks like. There are many ways of making it to execute different kinds of codes or different logic at the same time. I believe we shall reach at that stage. So that's yeah. Let me just write here. So don't start variable names with some special characters. So what are these special characters? We have a plus as the first one. Let's just quickly get them. Let car equals sum. So this is car is just it's just a variable name. If I do plus, I get an error. If I do minus, I get an error. So we have plus, minus. If I do percentage, we get an error. So there are several. In short, most of them don't work. Just don't use them. The only one that might work is this called an underscore. An underscore is a special character, but it's still being read as a normal, like a normal character. It's like A, it's like B, it's like C. It has no special characteristics as compared to this plus, minus, modulus, slash. So if you notice this plus, this is the normal addition. Minus, this is minus. Percentage, this is called modulus in programming. And we have this slash, this is a divide. A divide by. So remember, don't start with this and several others. For example, you might get yourself maybe trying to use the tilde, don't use it, or this other, his friend here, sijui ni Kingongo. So don't use these special characters as the first ones, and actually don't even include them in your declaration. So you can't add plus anywhere here and say you have declared a variable. No, it won't work. So the only one that works is an underscore. So I said there are different ways of declaring these variables, and we have just talked about the rules on how to write them, some of the rules. The next one we have, when we are declaring a long variable, let's say I want to declare the term high school, like that. I say the high school. So if I say this, you might notice somehow this is not readable. Yes, it's readable for you who is reading, but let's say you wanted to make this one readable. How could you do that? We have something called camel case. I could change the S to capital S, high school. I didn't want to separate them like this because it will result to an error. So you just leave it that way, but change the next word into it starts with a capital letter. So this is, I believe, called camel case. And we have another way of declaring this one. So you could do that. That one is advisable and a good practice. You also have something like higher institution, like that. You say the institution. So these are the two words. I have just joined them with an underscore. So for example, when you are writing a user information, so you could just say let user underscore. Okay, because we have several, so let username. That's the first one. You could say the username here. Then let's say let user email equals to email at example.com. We could say let user age equals to 24. So as we go down, you notice I just did username, used an underscore to separate user and email, used the capital A here to just say age 24, user age. Always you could use these methods when you are writing your variable names. One thing to take care of and to take note of, don't use camel case and these underscores at the same time. So if you have decided to write your JavaScript program well and you are writing them that way, so it's best if you were to choose camel case. I've forgotten how we call the use of an underscore. I don't know. Robin, if you come across the term, you could let me know. So it's good you just choose a single method. That's the best. You could use this single name, like a single variable name yenye haina underscore age. Yes. Yeah. I've also Yeah, I've tried to get the name, it's gone. So just use an underscore. So I was talking about how to, oh, snake case. I believe this is snake case. Yeah, so an underscore is called snake case. User age is camel case. So camel case, unaonanga camel inakuanga na ako kanikaka hapo juu. And for the snake case, underscore, it's like joining together. User email, rest of the information goes here. That's a snake case and this is camel case. Yes, those are the two. So if you are writing a program, you could use either this with one of these. Remember that you don't have to use both of them, because if I were to come and start looking at your JavaScript code, I realize you are using snake case at the same time using camel case. It's not a good idea. If you declare here user underscore first underscore name as Dalmas, then be sure the next declaration we are doing user underscore last underscore name is always in snake case. Don't say let user underscore email. You do this email camel case and you say email at I don't know nin.com. So don't do this. It's not advisable. Like you are using different cases. You are using snake case together with camel case. Always either choose to use snake case, underscores, or camel case. And don't write this. It's because it's snake case and you decided to say user underscore. What's you say age here? This is not advisable. But trying to confuse yourself. User underscore age. Don't do this. Capital A here. No. Remember to just say user underscore age, all in lowercase. The other one is if you are declaring a constant, you could do constants are good for those like the underscore the snake case. Just say math I equals to 3.142. So that's the math pi. And if you were to say math phi, so for phi you could just maybe go to that value. I see it 6 to 5. So that's math phi. For constants, always use underscores because you won't differentiate between math pi and other. It will be like hard to read through. It's good to do that. Or you could just say const large underscore number equals to math dot uh, positive infinity. Is it infinity na math iko wapi kwanza? Is it math? It's math dot it's gone. So infinity in infinite. Nope, it's not coming. So you could say here infinity like that. So this is a large number, infinity. We have positive infinity, that is this one, and negative infinity. I believe this one. Is it negative or is it written? It's not even coming to my head now. So if you do this, it's good if you are doing constants using underscore. But if you are doing let or these variables, declaring variables, just use an underscore with lowercase. and don't include this uppercase at user age is capital. Yeah, I believe I've touched a bit about how to write the variables, how declaring, and a bit about data types, how to use console.log. So any questions so far? Okay, so those are the basics of JavaScript one needs to know before they get started into deep coding in JavaScript. So I believe we have some time, 5 minutes. So I'm going to introduce JS functions a bit and quickly introduce DOM API just for a moment because we don't have this time fully. The reason as well I'm going to introduce JavaScript functions and DOM API now, we shall start using them. If you do recall, we had that project to do application. That's where they will be used mostly. So let me quickly do that. So what are the JavaScript functions? JavaScript functions. So JavaScript functions, it's like let's say it's a logic that you want to be executed in a single place. Let's call it a package. Yes, so how do you declare JavaScript functions? So first you start by the term function. It's a function. How can I explain this? I don't know. So this function, its main aim is to add. I'm going to do the brackets there and curly braces. So this is a function. That's how you just declare function. So this one way, there's another way. So you start by the term function. It's going to add. Let me just write this one. Add two numbers like that. So add two numbers. It's going to add two numbers together. So for example, here I'm going to say console.log 2 plus 2, 2 plus 3. It's not running or it's not printing anything out. So why is that the case? Add two numbers, when you declare function, it's supposed to be called. How can I say? Yes, for example, if you make a function, let's say you have a function, you have a wedding, you need to do the wedding for it to work out. Yes, you said you have a wedding. Yes, you have to do the wedding for the wedding to be a wedding. So when you declare function add two numbers, you have to call it. How do you call a function? You just paste it there and add the brackets there. This function calling, function invocation. So it's going to print out 5. So what is function invocation? Function invocation is to make the function do what's supposed to do. It's making the function to be working. So when you are declaring functions, for example, this one add two numbers, as it says, it needs to have two numbers to add together. So I can say the first number, num1, and then the second one is num2. Yes, I said don't use special characters. I've used numbers here. So when you use numbers after the first character, they will still work out because they are now not taken as numbers, but rather taken as just a string, a normal string. So this function added two numbers, so it's going to take two numbers, num1 and num2. So I can just say num1 plus num2. So if I save that, not a number. So why is it saying it's not a number? So let me confirm something here. So we did do here use strict, but it's not catching an error here. So why is it not catching an error? Add two numbers takes something called parameters. The two parameters, num1, that's the first number, and the second number. But in this case, you have just called it here without the two numbers. What happens is num1 and num2 are treated as undefined. If you do recall, we said we have something called undefined as a data type. I believe maybe we introduced it in the wrong place, but yes. So they are taken as undefined, and the none is also some sort of data type. So let me just include it here, none, like that. So when you are you are writing a function and it takes in two parameters, always remember to pass in the two parameters. Add two numbers, it takes in two numbers, one comma the second one. So if I save this, it's going to add 1 plus 2, which is 3. But sometimes you may do this and you say another number, num3 equals to 2, equals to 3. So I can say num1 plus num2 plus num3. So if I do that, it's going to say 6. Why is that the case? So when you are adding parameters to a function, num1 here you have to pass it in, num2 yes you have to pass in, num3 has been given a default value, or it has been assigned a default value. So that comes in with another term, assigning. So what's assigning a variable? Its value. So when we did here large number and assigned it to infinity, infinity is a large number that goes beyond just infinity. So that's the worst explanation I believe of infinity. Just know it's a number that's really large. So this is how you assign a value. So when I say const large number equals to infinity, I have assigned infinity to large number, or I have given large number a value. That's assigning. So num3 here in this case has been assigned a default value. So what's a default value? For example, if we were to just write some HTML here, we had our inputs here. We could use another placeholder here and say default. So if I save that, you will notice a placeholder here saying default. But how can I add a default value to an input? So how to add a default value? Just come here and say value equals to default value. So this one is not going to be treated as a default value, but rather a value that was there. Then how can I increase this? It's going to go beyond there. Okay, yes. So you might notice the default value as a string here. I can continue typing. I can delete it now to pass in my value. So that's about default values. That's if you were to do with that HTML. But in functions, in JavaScript functions, you could declare default values. If you say num3 equals to 3, that's the default value. This is a simple explanation about functions, and also this function does not return anything. So for this case, it's just console.log. Some functions are supposed to print out something. So I can say print add two numbers. So what print add two numbers we are going to say is, oh, actually this was supposed to be print. I can call this one now add two numbers, like that. So print add two numbers, if I take this one, it's just going to print them to the console. Here we have 6, but add two numbers, instead of it printing, we are going to return the result of add two numbers. Const result equals to, and this is no longer add two numbers because it's taking in three numbers. So let's change this one to 1, and here I'm going to return something, result. So for example, what is the result of a wedding? It's a family, if we take it in the cultural way of using the term wedding, cultural or the new way. So if you say you have a wedding, your wedding is the function, then after the wedding, what will happen? The result is a family, two people together. So here we go with the add two numbers as a function. It's going to return the result instead. So if I call here add two numbers with the same numbers, 2 and 2, you will notice it's not printing anything out. But we know something for sure. This function is returning something. So how can we get the result of the function? So this function is called a void function. This one has a return value. It's not void. So you can say this is a void function. It returns nothing. it returns nothing. That's what it does. It just prints out directly. But this one is not a void function because it's returning something. So how can we get the result? You can assign the result to a const or a let answer equals to add two numbers. Then you can go ahead and print or not print and console.log the answer like that. So if I do that, save, you will notice answer equals to 5. So sometimes you might wonder, why is it that I added answer here, then a comma, then answer? Sometimes you need to know what you are logging out. The best way to know is adding some string, that is this double quotes or a single quotes, then adding a comma before you do the object you want to log out. So answer here in this case it's an object, but the type of this answer it's a number. If you were to check out type of answer, you will notice it's type of number. Yeah, so if you want to know what you are logging out, just remember to add some text. This is some salt to show you, okay, whatever I'm logging out here at this place, it's an answer. So that's how you do it. You don't just have to just maybe what's not happening. You don't just have to just console.log answer. You can add that salt for you to be able to know exactly what you are logging out or what you are warning out. Or at warning, it's console.warn. Yeah. So console.warn the answer. So always remember to add this if you want exactly to know what you are logging out. So as in case you left this console here, yeah, if you left this console.log here and they come tomorrow, oh, I was logging out the answer at this particular point, and if you sit in your logs here, you can be able to see that. So that's the best way or the quickest way I can say of about functions. This is the first way of declaring functions, doing function name, this one. Sometimes not all functions takes in some parameters. So I can say function no parameters. There we go. And I can just say console.log this function takes no parameters. So still I only see my answer here, not the second console.log of this function takes no parameters. Reason being, I also need to call this function no parameters. I need to call it that way. It's a void, by the way. If you look here, it's saying it's just a void function. This is not a void function. It's returning something. Where is it here? So actually this is not void, it's returning something which is like it's anything. It's returning something and it's returning anything. So if I save this one, you will notice this function takes no parameters. So not all functions take parameters. Sometimes you just want a function to do some logic. And what's logic? Logic is something like this. Like follow some steps, do something, either return me something or don't return anything, just store that result somewhere. So that's the first way of declaring functions. There's another way of declaring functions using the const keyword. So in this const keyword, if I say const new func equals to this, like that. So this is also a function, but I've just said new func. And if you look at the way I'm declaring my functions, I'm using camel case to declare my functions. This should be numbers. I'm using camel case. I find it easier to go through and not to have a lot of things. So add two numbers. So this new func, also you can also write the normal, like it can take parameters. param1 and another param2, and it can do something with it. So you can just say console.log param1, param2. So that's a function, new func. If I save this, the second console.log is not working out. Why? We also need to invoke it. So I am going to invoke it using new func, and the first parameter I'm going to say Dalmas, and the second I'm going to say likes coding. So you will notice something here. It's going to print out Dalmas, then likes coding, because it has taken in the two parameters. These are any type of parameters. Then I can also pass in here 25. It will still work out Dalmas 25. It's taking in two parameters. So this is a way of declaring functions. They have a major difference in them. So you can declare a function using const. Don't use let here, kindly. Don't use let. Always use const when you're declaring functions. This is called an arrow function. It has an arrow here. And how did I reach the arrow? Equal sign, closing angle bracket. Equal sign and the greater than sign. They are close together. Don't space them. They are not going to make any sense. They are together. It's called an arrow function first because it has this arrow, and that's the last thing. This is a way of declaring them. When should you use an arrow function? This is called arrow function. And when should you use a normal function? Normal function. When should you use the two? How should you apply the two functions? So they are both functions, they can do the same thing, but when are you supposed to use? So this is new func here, and I have said called it here or invoked it here as new func. What if I were to change this new func and or call it here on top of it? I say new func and I say Dalmas on top. So it's going to say cannot access new func before initialization. So what does that mean? It's trying to access this new function. This it's below it here, but new func has not been initialized. So can I use this thing before it has not started? It's like driving a vehicle that has not started. So you can't drive such a vehicle unless it's downhill and somebody gave it a push. It's just when ikienda na pepo. So when you are using arrow functions, always remember they can only be invoked after they have been initialized or declared. So I can only invoke this arrow function below it, not on top of it, below it. Because yes, yes, yeah, you can say haitaipata sahi. So if you call an arrow function, not si ati kwenye a function, you only invoke a function outside a function. So yeah, so arrow functions, you can only invoke them below the function, below, after you have finished declaring it. Up and above, if I do that, it will bring the error. But if I do below it here, it's going to work. Umeona? Dalmas on top, it's going to console log. So let's talk about this other function here. So we have a function that takes no parameters here. So if I copy this function and remove it and invoke it above it, like that, save. This function takes no parameters. You see the difference? So this function, when you invoke a function using the function keyword and call it either on top or below, it's just going to work out very well. That's the main difference about. I can just do another one there. There's no error. It has printed both. So that's the main difference between an arrow function and the normal function. So you can declare normal function just at the end of the file. Huko chini kabisa, Same is in utilities. Utilities. We paste hapo. It will still work. But if you do the same for an arrow function, copy it from here, same it's also a utility function, and paste it down here, you are going to meet yourself into serious problems. So use an arrow function chini yake. If you want to use this new function here, then you could just place it on top of your file here. There, it's going to work very well. But if you do the opposite, it's not going to work. So that's about a short story about functions. Any questions? I just quickly introduce the DOM API, and we start using the DOM API as we learn the rest of the stuff down. Okay, I believe my new func is there. So the next part, I'm just going to comment out this no parameters function because I'm not going to call it. I don't want to console log anything. I believe I'm clean. Yes, I'm clean. So I'm going to talk about the DOM API, just a bit about the DOM API. So like CSS, we did do something like I do my style here, and we could just come here and say, I want to select the body. I just come here and say body. I've selected the body, and I can change the background color to red. So that's the body. This is a selector. If there's another class here, let's say main.wrapper, I say the wrapper, and I come here, I select the wrapper class here. I say dot wrapper. So that's why I select the wrapper. I say the background color to yellow. Yes, another one more thing. Then if I were to say the sidebar, so aside dot sidebar, if I were to not dot, I'll do hash here. This or not hash ID. So this is another selector, and I say aside. So if I say aside here, I can be able to select this element using hash. So I believe we are in terms up to this point, and I say background color, background to green. So if I come here, you can be able to see the wrapper has a yellow background, the aside has a green background, and the body has a red background. That was the way we did it in CSS. How we did selectors. You could select using just an element, select using a class dot, or select using an ID hash. How can we do the same in JavaScript? In simple terms, how can we do the same in JavaScript? So if I come back to JavaScript and I want to select the body, I could just say document dot body dot style dot background color, like that. I can equally manipulate it from here and I say I want purple. So if I save, the body's background color changes to purple. That's I have selected the body generally as I did select the body here using CSS body. Or that's how you do the elements, not all elements. It's unique for the body. So that's for the body. But what if I want to select the wrapper and change maybe the color of wrapper from this black to something a different color? How can I be able to do that? So I can be able to do the same if I come here and say document dot get. I can say query selector all, and I say dot wrapper dot. I can now update the style. It won't work. Let me show you why it won't work. Dot style dot color equals to white. So if I do that, there's something we get here. Set properties of undefined color. So I'm trying to set the color of the wrapper directly here. So this is also a selector, but it's selecting everything. So how can I be able to like add a color to the wrapper, change the color from black to white. Then if I want to do that, I can be able to select all the wrappers, let wrappers equals to that. And instead of doing that, I just select them that way. So I have wrappers equals to document.query selector all dot wrapper. So I can come here and let's see what the wrappers contain. Console.log. By the way, you can console.log anything. Remember that. So you are not limited to strings, numbers. Even after you have selected everything, selected all wrappers, I can be able to come, oh, it's a node list. And this node list has a length of 1 if you look it here. So what's a list? So as I said, there are a lot of things in JavaScript. So I did introduce something here called an array, where here, and another one called an object. So an array is like a list of things. For example, a list of to-dos. So I can just say here, const to-dos equals to, I do curly brackets, the first to do 1. I do another to do here, to do 2. I do another one here, to do 3. So this is a list of to-dos. There is just pure strings, just strings. I will talk more about arrays. This is an array of to-dos. So what we got about these wrappers, they are called a node list. This kind of unique. If we go deep down how node list works. What's a node? When we talk of nodes is, if I come back to this elements tab, and let me just do that, you can be able to notice we have these elements here, the doc type, HTML, and the head we have, there we go, then we have the body. So these are all nodes, but this is unique. We selected all. That's the work of query selector all wrappers, but we only had a single wrapper, a single element with a wrapper class. So then what's not going on here? So about that, so this is a list of all wrappers. And how can you be able then to set color to all those wrappers? Then we come into loops. There's something Robin talked about that's called loops. So I want to set the color of each wrapper to white. So I can just come here and say for. So I'm going to write a for loop for let I equals to 0. I is less than wrappers dot length. Then something I've done it wrong here. It shouldn't be a comma, but rather a semicolon. Then I do that and I say I plus plus. There we go. This is a conditional, not a conditional. This is a loop. And we also have another loop called while. So this is a loop. I'm going to loop through all these elements, all these node lists, or anything that is within this list. You see that it was something sort of an array. Let me just console.log this to-dos. So if I console.log to-dos, you will notice they say there are 3. That is this one, to do 1, to do 2, to do 3. This is called an array in JavaScript at index 0, index 1, and index 2. Talking about indexes, it's like the position of that item in an array. That's an index. So I think that's the farthest about indexes. So I can go for now. So I want to look through all these wrappers and change their colors. So I can just say here, let wrapper equals to wrappers index. So this might be confusing for now, but this is how it works. So this is a loop. It's going to loop through this. It's like going to run isome hii ya kwanza, isome ya pili, isome na ya tatu. So for each wrapper, I'm going to just go down and I say wrapper.style.color set to white. So I save that. It's going to run, and you will notice the color, you are not seeing it from your side. Let me change it to something which is visible, red. So I've looked through all the wrappers and set their color to red. Let me increase the size. Maybe it will make sense here. Add some padding here of 20 px, 20 px, and add some font size of even 100 px. So there we go. So the wrapper has red, but that was not the original size, the original color, because we have actually selected the wrapper and changed the color. Remember, I didn't use here const. If I do that, it will still work, but sometimes it might fail to work because this is mutating the wrapper. We want something mutating, so just use let to be secure. So it's going to mutate the style of this wrapper, that is specifically the color attribute, to red. You can change it to whatever you want here, say purple. So that's another selector. It's doing the work of selecting all, query selector all. We have the third one that we had here, that's the sidebar. This sidebar has an ID of sidebar. So if I copy the ID, come to my code here, and I want to exactly select that sidebar, I can just say const sidebar equals to document dot query, not instead of query selector, now I'm going to use get element by ID, that sidebar ID. You notice I have not added hash here because it's just the ID. So I can be able to directly say sidebar.style.color. I want to specifically set the color of this sidebar to, currently our aside has a background color of green. Let's actually update a lot of things. So we are just going to start by the color, set it to red, not this way. You need to do style.color equals to red, set the sidebar.style.background, say yellow. Is it yellow right now? It's green. Now let's do another color which is not visible from there. I'm going to set white smoke. Then I'm also going to set the sidebar dot style dot padding. I'm going to set it to 20 px. Now let's do with a larger number, that pixels. Now I'm also going to set the sidebar dot style dot font size. Yes, let's increase the font size to something large, even 200 px. You notice all those styles have been applied. But here's the thing, you are not going to use JavaScript to do styling of your components, because somehow it's hectic to select the right items, and you are going to do a lot of things to write the styles. But this is just an example on how to interact with JavaScript and HTML. So if you are deciding to do styles, just use CSS, and the JavaScript will specifically do something small. I'm going to add another thing here. Yes. Okay, now I'm going to add a class here to this heading one and say heading. So this is our heading. I'm going to use another selector. So const heading equals to document dot query selector. I'm going to say dot heading. So this is kind of looks like selector here. It kind of looks the same as query selector all, but it's just query selector dot heading. It's like selecting one item, just the first item it gets, with a class of heading. And usually you could use this one with the dot or hash. That's ID and the classes. Currently we are using a class. Then I can be able to go ahead and say heading dot style dot font size. Oh, it's not working. Heading dot. So let me test out. Font size equals to 300 px. So yes, our heading has increased the font size to 300 pixels. Let me zoom out a bit that way and do this one. So it's selected. Let me reduce this one to 50. So it has selected our heading, that's JavaScript, and increased its size to 50 px. So you might ask yourself, who is this applying these styles, or where have they been applied? You notice it has added inline styling here for us. Style, font size 50 pixels. And also if you go to the aside, it has just said color red, background, white smoke, padding that pixels, font size 200 pixels. But we didn't declare them here. So that's about the DOM API. We didn't do any inline styling here, but it has given us inline styling at the end. So that's how it works. So that's a little bit about the DOM API and how to select elements from the DOM. So you could use query selector all, but remember this one is one to return an array. And for you to use each item in this array of wrappers, you need to loop through. We have get element by ID. It's going to select just a single element from the DOM that has this ID of sidebar. Let me confirm about dot heading before I just make my final resolution. So I'm going to add another same class of heading. I can just switch this one to H2 like this and change the title to HTML and CSS. Let's see what happens. So this is heading 2. Let's see whether the classes have been applied to it. Yes. So what happened here? Why did it not select heading 2 and add the same classes as the H1? So there's a good reason for that. Query selector works like get element by ID, and it only selects the first item. Remember, it only selects the first item with this class. So for this case, if we were to swap the HTML and CSS with JavaScript, HTML and CSS ikuja juu JavaScript ikuja chini, you will notice now that HTML and CSS styles may apply kwa HTML and CSS but apply kwa JavaScript. Reason being, dot query selector ina select the first element or the first occurrence of the class or the ID. If I were to use ID here, nothing happens, but if I come here and I change these classes to hash, or not hash, but rather ID, then you will notice it's just selecting the first occurrence of. It's similar to get element by ID. I've not worked much to say the difference between the two, but that's a belief. Sometimes you have an element that has that class and it's only the only element that has that single class, then you could just do query selector. But when you are selecting specific elements from the DOM, usually I like using the so-called get element by ID and adding that as an ID to that element, for example, to the class. So you could do ID of sidebar and also a class of sidebar. So this one will get the styling from the JavaScript on top here, not JavaScript, the CSS. Then the other ID here, and you use this one to specifically select this sidebar and add some functionality to it. Some functionality to it, yes. So that's a little bit about the DOM, but we have not written to the DOM. So let's write to the DOM and see how to write to the DOM. I'm going to write to the DOM, for example, here I'm going to do a div, and I'm going to give it an ID of DOM, just DOM, like that. So I'm going to select this div and write into it. So how can I do that? So I'm going to say const DOM equals to document dot get element by ID. So if you do this, we have other selectors. We have element by ID, element by class name, element by name. So what class name? So you will select all the elements that have the same class name. This is getting only the element with the same ID. All elements with the same class name by name. So by name, this kind of meeting, why I'm not getting it. That's that for me. But let's read the docs here. Get a collection of objects based on the value of the name or ID attribute. Oh, yes. By name, that means, let's say you had these inputs here. Input, like that. And this is type radio. And you say the name here is gender. So you could do that. So this is input type name, gender, and the value here is male, and the value here is female. So this one is going to just select only these elements which have the same name. Let's continue element. So that's by name. We also have by tag name. By tag name means these are HTML tags. This one, H1 is an HTML tag, H2 div input. So if I'm going to select all the divs or all the LIs, then that's what I'm going to do. Use the by tag name. And the last one we have tag name ns. Inamaanisha aje? Oh, if namespace and local, no, I even don't know this one fully, so let me just avoid it for good. But you could learn about this using the MDN reference if you click the link here of MDN. So I'm going to get the element by ID, and the one we gave it is DOM. So I want to write to DOM. Currently DOM is not visible in the browser, but how can I write onto DOM this element of ID DOM? Then I'm going to just go to say DOM dot set text content, I believe. So you could be text content and say my DOM element like that. So if I save, you will notice it has added my DOM element here. Then I can even go ahead and do some styling. DOM dot style dot color equals to white. DOM dot style, nope, 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 style. Yes, okay. So let me just, okay, I'll just end it here. So that's how you do or write back to the DOM. So DOM dot text content or writing back to the this element here. That's one way of writing into this. We also have another method called inner HTML and the inner text. Inner text will write the text still, like my DOM element here, and inner HTML will do the same. Inner HTML will still write my DOM element, but this one will allow you to write HTML, just plain HTML like that, as text. Okay. So I have bolderized that one. I can just quickly come here and change this one to a span. So I'm writing inner HTML and I'm going to just change the style and setting the color here. Okay. I'm going to say color. I say red maybe like that. So it's going to write back to the DOM. Now, my file has not been appropriated well. Why is it? Oh, didn't write the style well. Let me just rectify that style like that. So that's how you write back to the DOM. Yes, so that's about the DOM API. That's the introduction to the DOM API. We shall be using this very much and the query selectors, all this to do our to do application. Mtu akienter kitu kwa hiyo form ina pick inaandika back to the DOM. Yes, any questions about the DOM API or whatever we have covered today? Mm. Are things going good with the Okay, if you would watch the video, you'll understand what we have done. And if we start doing the practice, then definitely things will flow out well, I believe. But now this might look like really tough. Yeah. So thank you, John. Another comment, another question? Okay. So if there are no further questions, then maybe I'll just call on Robin to close the class. Okay, thank you, Robin. That's true. JavaScript is wide, very wide. Yes, it's good night. So, mupite video.